'Twas the night before Christmas, and all down Creep Street every creature was stirring, both living and deceased. Here witches who hanged by the chimney with care now pick up their brooms and take to the air. The children are nestled all warm in their beds, rest easy as Krampus got caught by the feds.
Maureen in her kerchief and Dylan in his cap scream into mics while sweet Banshee naps. When out on the street there arose such a clatter, covering the block in gore and in splatter. Into the couches they fell with a crash. Dylan took Adderall and Maureen rolled some hash. When what to my wandering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh, and the Patreon donors at our top tier.
On Watkins, on Via, on Vicky McHugh, on Sean, on Cameron, on Bex Martin, too. Teresa and Chris, each Hackworth by name. Don't forget Marcus Hall, the coolest bastard in the game. Of course, Nick Barker and Taylor Lashmet. We thank you for all the support that we get. We started as 2, but now it is clear it takes a village to keep Creep Street weird.
So gather round now, it might get gory. Tonight we share some listener stories. They come from the east, the north, south, and west to fill you with dread and woeful unrest. Light the Yule log and strap yourselves in. A creepier Christmas is about to begin. You're just in time for one hell of a treat, because you've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street.
Yes, thank you guys for joining us.
A little bit of a surprise episode today.
Yes, we wanted to give a little something extra to just show our gratitude, show our love.
Absolutely. We asked for listener stories a while back, and we've sat on them. We thought, you know what? This would be a great little new year. You know, in the tradition, they used to tell ghost stories on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, sometimes you don't think, you're like, ghost stories, Christmas, what?
Yeah.
And then you listen to that song, that classic song, and then they go, Tales of the... Oh, wait.
Scary ghost stories, tales of the glories.
Of Christmases long, long ago.
Hey, Andy Williams said it, friends.
And now we are deciding to get in on the action. We're trying to get on the ground floor, everybody.
Yes. And obviously, you will still get an episode tomorrow on Christmas Day, the Amityville Horror, the true story of the Amityville Horror.
And we also did that on purpose because, once again, ghost stories, Christmas,
yeah.
This, Amityville, one of the most well-known and
probably one of the most famous, at least American ghost stories.
Yeah.
I would say at least in America, one of the more famous ghost stories.
Yes.
So, this is fun. And finally, we're getting to share some stories of our dear listeners.
Yes, we are so excited to do this. And if you have if you have any ghost stories or paranormal stories yourself, please email us at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com, DM us,
absolutely,
whatever, and because we want to keep doing this.
We would love to do this a couple times a year. Do a listener stories.
Yeah.
That would be maybe one around the holidays and then one in the summer or something. That would be cool.
Absolutely. And we also we asked for some hometown scary stories earlier.
Absolutely.
And just wanted to let you know we have those. Thank you for letting us know. That will be another episode.
Absolutely.
But we're excited about that one. This time we're going a little bit more for the personal stories.
The personal stories. Let me first start off by just the regular housekeeping. Twitter at Creep Street Pod, Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast. Or if you'd like to support this show, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
Yeah.
Which you've heard their names already, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat them.
They need it. We need to hear them.
Of course, the Dream, James Watkins. The Finnish Face, Via Lundqvist. The Madman, Marcus Hall. The Vivacious, Vicky McHugh. The Tenacious, Teresa Hackworth. The Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth. The Oh So Suave, Sean Richardson. The British Bonebreaker, Bex Martin. The Notorious Nicholas Barker. The Terrified Taylor Lashmet. And the Count of Cool, Cameron Corliss. Yes.
Thank you. Happy winter solstice to that group. We cannot thank you enough.
Why don't we just start diving into these stories?
Let's
We've got some good ones.
We do.
We've got some good ones. Our first ghostly tale comes all the way from England. One of our favorite listeners, Rachel Dixon. She has been one of the coolest listeners.
She really has. We cannot thank you enough. So supportive, always given great suggestions and ideas for future episodes.
We're so happy to have you all here. We're so happy to have Rachel as a listener.
Absolutely.
My first memory of anything ghostly is hearing my dad say we had a ghost in the house that opened the oven door and would put the gas on, like if you were going to commit suicide. I remember him saying almost nightly he would smell gas when I was in bed and have to run downstairs to turn it off. I don't know, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if I was even born yet, but I think they moved house eventually. I have no way of finding out any more information as both parents have passed away. My first personal experience happened just over 17 years ago. I was pregnant and didn't find out until I was about 12 or 13 weeks. No morning sickness. Long story short, I was on the contraceptive pill for 3 months at a time to help with period pains. So before I actually knew anything about being pregnant, I walked into my living room to hear a baby screaming in the outside corner of the room where we had a big old dark wood display dresser. It was actually coming from inside the cupboard part. Needless to say, I was completely freaked out. I even went outside to check that there wasn't an abandoned baby on my doorstep. Then there was nothing till my daughter was born. We had a 3-bedroom house. My daughter was in the cot next to my side of the bed, which is the closest to the doorway. I walked upstairs only to see a perfect silhouette of a man rush at my daughter's cot. This completely freaked me out, and I never put her in her cot by herself ever again. It rushed so fast at the cot, it was like a perfect silhouette of a man, the darkest shadow I have ever seen. Then, when she was about 2 or 3, she would ask me who the man was that would sit on her bed at night. I asked her to describe how he looked, and she basically gave me a full-on description of my dad, so I told her not to be scared. She said she wasn't, and he told her bedtime stories. Then another time, I stood in the doorway talking to her, facing inside the room with the stairs behind me, as she looks over my shoulder up on the stairs and asks who the old man was standing on the stairs. She could see him and I could not. After that happened, every day at the bottom corner of the stairs, I could hear an old man coughing and could hear someone walking in the bedroom from the door to the window. I sent the dog up on many occasions to see if there was an actual intruder. I only ever felt scared by the shadow man running at the cot. Then we moved house, and that was a whole new experience. You would wake up randomly and see a figure at the bottom of the bed. The front door would sound like it'd slam off its hinges but hadn't even opened. I would get smells of stale smoke and alcohol, then extreme flower scents. You would see shadows move past doorways. Then we moved again to this current address, and there was nothing at all. It felt calm until our dog had to be put to sleep. She had organ failure and was 14 years old then, and constantly I would see her bolt past the kitchen doorway into the bathroom as she used to when she was alive. Then, 2 years later, our other dog died, and I can still hear her tapping through the house. Forget to say my mother passed away when I lived in the second house. Also, I had an incident where I'd woken at stupid o'clock for a drink, lay myself down, closed my eyes, felt something around my face. I opened my eyes to have something dive at my face. Proper horror movie jump scare stuff. I jumped out of my skin. I'm 100% sure it was my mother because it just felt and smelled like it was. Now, almost daily, I feel something on the end side of my bed as if sitting down and getting up.
Wow.
That is such a cool
That is such a cool story. I think these familial, I don't know what the right word is. I think it happens more than we think it does. I remember my aunts. I don't want to tell my aunt's story. I want to make sure I get the story right. But essentially, I remember my aunt once telling me the story. And I promise this pertains to this. I'm not just telling. My aunt, she had a loved one. This was years ago. But she had a loved one that was staying with them that was in ill health and who was going to pass. And they were taking care of her. Mm-hmm. Well, at night, if she needed something, she would call to my aunt down the hall. My aunt would come, Well, she had passed eventually. And one night, my aunt hears the voice calling for her.
Wow.
And, it's nighttime. She was asleep, so she's kind of in a daze,
Right.
She walks down the hall, forgetting at that moment that they had passed. Mm-hmm. And right as she got to that door, she remembered, oh, wait a second. And when she opened it, of course, no one's there.
Right.
And she just kind of said, it's okay. We're okay. You can pass on. And apparently after that, never had another.
Wow.
But I think things like that happen.
I mean, it makes sense. Who would you want to come back and check on? You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense that, and I think it makes sense that they would come back and check on their loved ones. And I think that also is a good way to remember that most kind of paranormal instances like this often are positive.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It doesn't of course it's a little scary because you don't know what's going on, and it just naturally it's uncertain and your body just might get scared. But it's good to know that sometimes these people or these past loved ones or whatever, they're just checking in.
Absolutely.
But weird though that she did get scared when she saw that like dark male figure. I wonder what that was.
Was that the second house? Because she said, so the first house, she said she was almost certain it was her father, right? And then in the second house.
Yeah, it was in the house when her daughter was born, because it was the house that
The first house was when they were running toward the cot, right? But then in the second one, she said it was a whole new experience.
Right.
You would wake up randomly to see a figure at the bottom of the bed. I wonder, is that the same specter or the same spirit, like of a loved one or is this a new when she moved into the new house? That's very fascinating.
Yeah, thank you so much for sending that story. And it's cool too how it's like it wasn't just a one-time thing. It's been kind of something she's been experiencing for a while, and it's kind of interesting too, where it's like certain environments maybe amplify it, like certain houses it was more active, and then it seems like in her current house, she does say she still experienced things obviously, but maybe it's not to the degree where she's actually seeing apparitions or and
how nice that the pup still visits, especially since Rachel is a big dog person, so it would make sense they'd want to still be there with her.
That's so sweet.
All right, should we jump to the next one?
Let's do it. Who's next?
The next one is coming out of North Carolina. Mr. Nicholas Barker, which, by the way, I'm reading his book right now, Inhumanity. I've finally gotten some time. I've been slowly, because we've been researching. So when you're reading books for research, it's, it's nice when I get that little time away to read Inhumanity. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, check out his book, Inhumanity by Nicholas Barker.
Such a great guy.
We love this guy. Great fan of the show. So fun.
Good writer. I like reading his, I like reading his book.
I'm going to pick it up. I'm excited.
Well, this is a rather creepy story from the notorious Nicholas Barker.
Pop off.
As a part of Subscriber Stories, I thought I would share this with you guys. Around 2010, some friends and I decided to start checking out haunted places. We all drove up to Asheville, North Carolina one night to check out this manor house on top of Bowcatcher Mountain. The place was really interesting, but we never made it to the actual house. Instead, we all began looking around on this bridge that led to the manor, but was gated off on the far side. We all asked questions and hung out for a bit while I took pictures and some video, which all pics and video have been lost now. One of the things about this bridge is that one of the family committed suicide by hanging themselves off one side of it. If you take a photo below the bridge, then sometimes you'll see a noose hanging off the side. I wanted that shot to test this theory. I took several pictures, but couldn't see anything right away. After some time had passed, we all left and I took my friends home. My last friend lived 30 minutes from my parents' home, so I dropped him off and then I hit I-40 home. While I was driving in my 92 Dodge Colt, I could feel something was sitting in the back seat of my car as I was driving. It was an odd feeling, but no matter how far I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was in the seat. I just kept looking in the back without reacting and drove all the way home. By the time I reached my parents' house, whom I was living with at the time, that feeling was gone. I went into the house and moved into my room, which didn't have a door because it was supposed to be a living room. I was up for a bit playing World of Warcraft before I went to bed. I turned out the lights and laid there in bed for a few moments until I felt sleepy and began to drift off to sleep. I was almost to the point of sleeping when I felt the mattress beneath me begin to shift. It was bending down on the edges and bulging in the middle as if someone was laying underneath and pulling the edges down. I freaked out and was instantly snapped into alert mode. I jumped out of the bed and onto the floor and ran to flip on the light. I could now see that there were 2 handprints on each side of the mattress, pulling the edges down, just like I felt, but I could see no physical hands there. I looked under the bed in a panic, but there was nothing but the stuff that I had just stored under the bed. I was now frozen in fear where I stood and watched as the mattress went back to normal slowly and the handprints vanished. In seconds, there was something that jumped onto my bed and stood there. But it wasn't like normal feet. Instead, these imprints of oddly shaped circles, as if it had hooves. It growled at me loudly, and I could do nothing. I couldn't even think from all the fear. I'm not sure what happened to this thing, but it jumped down from the bed, and I could hear steps like running out of the room and down the hallway, with the front door opening and slamming downstairs. I was confused and horrified after all this, and flabbergasted that no one else seemed to wake up from all the sound. I even went to my parents' room just down the hall and could hear them snoring. The rest of the night, I laid in my bed and didn't sleep a wink. A year later, I was taking a computer art class in college, and we were using Photoshop to create collages and stuff on iMac. I put a flash drive into my computer to save my project, and there were the pictures that I had taken at the manor. I began messing with the picture to enhance them and checked them all. The only photo that captured anything was the photo that was taken from under the bridge. There were tons of orbs everywhere, and in the middle of the bridge was a noose that wasn't there in real life, just hanging off the bridge. Well, that's my story, and I hope you all like it. But it took me several days of thinking whether I should share this or not, but I've decided to share. Thank you for reading it.
Wow.
Oh my God.
That's scary.
Good Lord.
The hooves? Damn, that's freaky.
That is really
That
scary.
is freaky.
So this is kind of a different vibe than Rachel's. You know, hers was more so, you know,
More
like,
benevolent, more...
this is,
At the very worst,
you know,
right.
yeah.
At the very worst, Rachel's was kind of, there were moments maybe where you couldn't kind of tell.
More uncertainty.
But for the most part, it seemed familial. It seemed like it was family or a loving spirit of some kind.
Right.
Although
This
something
is-
did dash at her face. Remember,
But she said that she thought that was her mom, though.
Right.
I think sometimes there's a little bit of a communication delay
Mm.
when it comes to the spirits and in livings people, where you're like, why would you? You're the humans now, like the living
Yeah.
people are like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
That's not nice. But then on the other side, it must make sense. You're like, no, you don't understand. I'm a ghost. Like I gotta kind of zoom in there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I wouldn't mind. I want to talk to Nicholas Barker more about this.
this is. I mean, the noose just like it wasn't there, but it was there.
That
like,
sounds like fodder for a whole episode topic, this bridge, and maybe we could get a little phone interview with him. And
was this in North Carolina? Did you say?
Yep, he said it was near Asheville. It was a
Interesting.
manor. They didn't actually get to the house, but they were on the road leading up to it, where apparently this person hanged themselves.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow. The hoofs. And then I'm getting a little bit of and I actually did from Rachel's too, a little bit of Amityville horror kind of connections, which you'll see a little bit more tomorrow. There's some similar things going on, which I just think is very apt. Shall we go across the sea?
That's right.
Again?
This next story you're about to hear is from someone whose name you've heard quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Uncle K. Fabe, a.k.a. the Finnish face, the badass of Finland.
Oh yeah.
He's turning Finland into Winland.
Okay. Good.
Mr. Via Alungfist.
That's right.
Now, his story is kind of short, but it's cool.
It's very cool. And once again, another fantastic fan, great friend. We are so happy to have you on the Creep Street team.
That's right. We're so happy to have you. Yes.
Yeah, this has been always so supportive, always having great ideas for stuff. He actually helped out with our Lake Bottom /
Yes,
Bodom
he was the one
episode.
who recommended that, and he
Yeah.
said Nils did it. Because we were in our research, we were kind of what do you call it? In our minds, from our sources, we didn't think, but he swears.
Apparently,
Nils did
everyone in Finland is like, it's Nils.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe it's
So
Nils.
here's his story. Like I said, short but sweet, pretty cool.
Yeah.
This happened in Christmas 2011. I was 24 at the time. My mother and father rented an old house in Italy in the small town between Rome and Naples. My sister and me arrived there a few days before this happened to me. So one night, I suddenly woke up, and a few meters from me was this white, pale woman, and she just looked at me for a few seconds. Then she waved at me, and her head tilted, and she started to rise from the floor, and she went through the roof, and I felt this powerful current going through me 5 times. After this, I was unable to sleep in that room anymore. I still think about this meeting with her, but it was a very peaceful moment. Nothing scary or malicious.
Wow. Well, very perfect timing that this was a Christmas
Christmas one.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit, obviously, didn't end the same way, but it reminds me a little bit of our I Slept with a Ghost episode. There's something about this encounter that's very, he doesn't feel scared. He's on holiday, kind of a one-night stand.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that ghost was
trying to, I don't know. Yeah, we're joking, Via. We don't actually think you were trying to get with this ghost.
Oh, of course, we're joking.
But if you were, God bless. Yeah, this is just one of those weird things where, like, and I've heard about this happening, not exactly this, obviously, but similar things happening like this to lots of friends, or just I read about it on Reddit forums or things like that, where it's just someone is in the room with you, and even though it is frightening, you know that it's not bad necessarily, and it's something too about, like, you're kind of in a slightly unfamiliar place. Like, you know, you're not in your own home. I don't know. It's just so odd, and I wonder what it was that he felt this kind of like energy course through him 5 times.
Right.
So interesting.
5 times. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I wondered, like, what this energy felt like.
I mean, whatever it is, it clearly
Right. Well, he said he didn't feel scary, so I'm assuming it must not have hurt.
Right. It wasn't something threatening or
right. That's
or dangerous necessarily. Yeah. Wow. But thank you, Via, for sharing that. What a cool a little shot to the system.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Via. Now, our next one comes from one of our literal best pals.
We love this guy.
This is literally, this is Patrick McDonald, one of our best pals. I think we've mentioned it before on the show, but we obviously, as many of you know, how we met was we were comedians on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
And one of our fellow comedians was a guy named Patrick McDonald, a guy I knew specifically. Well, we both kind of knew. I knew him very well. He was one of my best pals. We did a lot of shows in Chicago.
Right.
He was there. We were roommates. We were cabin mates on this ship. Yeah. He was there when I was falling for Miss Momo.
That's right.
He was there. He would be like, so what's going on with you and Maureen? I'd be like, nothing.
Literally nothing. Don't
Literally
talk to
nothing.
me.
Back off, guy.
And then he'd be like,
literally nothing.
And then Patrick would be like,
really?
Are you sure?
You seem like you like her. Literally nothing, Pat. But no, he's one of my best pals.
Yeah.
He just moved to New York.
Yes.
We love him to death. This story is from one of the best, Mr. Patrick McDonald.
We love him.
Right before I moved from Pennsylvania to Chicago, my parents and family moved into a new home that was 150 years old. It was a gorgeous old home on a very old Pennsylvanian road that went right into the city of Philadelphia. The inside was modernized, and at some point there was an addition to the house in the back. The addition was our den, or living room / TV room. My parents were mainly in there before bedtime, and I would be in my room watching TV on my own. My brother had his own room in the addition closer to the den. My room was in the old house up on the 2nd floor, where I spent most of my time. My eldest brother had a family of his own, and my sister was living in Chicago, so it was just the 4 of us. Our neighbors weren't close enough that we could ever hear them outside, or even close enough to say a friendly hello. Our house had a long driveway, and the house was offset from the road. My bedroom door was in the back corner of the house. If you left my room, to the left was the original old bathroom with an old bear claw tub, and across the hall was a newer bathroom with a shower and a deck to the outside. We were there for a few months without consequence, and one bright early evening in the fall, things started happening. I went out to the 2nd floor deck to make a call, and I heard my mom yell to me from downstairs. I barely heard her, but I responded to her that I was on the phone and would be there in a minute, and went back to the call. I heard her yell to me again. Getting very annoyed, especially while living with your parents, I barked down that I would be there in a minute. I finished the call and went directly downstairs, where my parents were very concerned. They wanted to know why I was yelling, and I told them I was on the phone. And they asked if I got into an argument on the call because I had yelled to them. My mother hadn't called for me at all. I yelled at a woman calling my name twice. The second time that the woman yelled my name was from inside the house. The sound was undeniable. My parents swore they didn't call me, so I apologized and went back to my room very confused. My parents liked to joke around all the time, but they would always tell me if they were kidding immediately. I wasn't convinced it was from a ghost, but it was very weird. Then shit got a little crazier. Things started happening in my room at night. I'd be awoken by someone telling me something completely random. "You gotta catch the bus," was once whispered in my ear as I laid in bed right before sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night with a feeling like one of my parents was in the room, like in Back to the Future, where Marty wakes up after being hit by the car and his mom is consoling him, and turn on the lights and see that there was no one there. I'd turn on the lights and see that there was no one there. I kept trying to convince myself that it wasn't happening. I didn't tell anyone this, to be honest. I thought I might actually be going crazy. These were crazy claims. This shit doesn't happen, not to adults that believe it. Yet little things like that would happen, and I was never scared or felt like I was in danger. That was the craziest part. It was like someone was there from time to time. Crazy. I'm an agnostic atheist. I was a Catholic growing up, but I wasn't sure I believed in ghosts at all. There is very questionable proof, quote unquote, out there with enough evidence to debunk most of the ghost hunting claims. Then things got a little scarier, little by little. I would feel a person sitting at the foot of my then twin bed. I'd feel the bed dip down to support weight. And one night, something pulled the top cover off my bed slowly and down one corner. I had to tug on it to actually get it back. One night, I woke up in the dead of night, and there was a woman standing at the foot of my bed. She was see-through. She was pretty, probably in her 20s. She had long brown hair and was wearing a white robe with long sleeves. It wasn't sleep paralysis. I was awake. I could move. I did move, but I was too afraid to run to the door. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking out the window, which was out at the back of the house. Her head did one movement that looked like she was looking for something in the backyard. I put my sheet over my head and thought, this isn't happening. You're not seeing this. When I gathered myself and looked again, she was still there, and she was looking at me with her hands on her face as if she was scared of me. I pulled my sheets back over my head, took a breath, looked again, and she was gone. Again, I didn't tell anyone. This felt oddly personal, and I thought no one would believe me. The scary stuff then tapered off after seeing that woman. There were occasional times of hearing nonsensical talking right before I would fall asleep, and who knows how much of that was dream versus reality. Somewhere in the middle of this mess, I got cast in a comedy show at a casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey, as an Irishman going to Finnegan's Wake. There was a cast house close to the casino, and I would drive the 2 hours from Pennsylvania to Atlantic City every Thursday and drive back home Monday. It was dope. The cast was young, and at the end of the weekend of shows, we would all party and get drinks in the casino lounges and bars. My sister was home for one holiday, and she and some friends came to Atlantic City to see the show. She got back to Pennsylvania after I had left to Atlantic City for the weekend, and we hadn't spoken. After the show, we all went out and got drinks with the cast. My sister became friendly with Brett, one of the actors in the show, and they talked for a good bit that night. I didn't really speak to her much the rest of the night. She and her friends split off at the end of the night and went back with much of the cast back to the cast house. The next morning, I woke up at the cast house and saw Brett making coffee, and he nonchalantly said, "Hey, why didn't you tell anyone that your house was haunted? That's wild." My stomach dropped and all the hair on my back of my head stood up. He told me that my sister, who was at my parents' house visiting from Chicago, heard a woman crying and sobbing very loudly. My sister thought it was my mom. My mom swore it wasn't her, and my dad is a light sleeper and said our mom wasn't crying. This corroborated that it was a woman and that I wasn't going crazy. After a few more months, we all started getting individual experiences. My parents moved out of that house a few years ago, and even though we all had experiences, none of us felt threatened during the interactions. There's more, but that beginning discovery was the scariest. Hope this helps.
Wow.
What a great story.
So good. Thank you so much to Patrick for
much.
sharing that story.
Wow.
I remember hearing that story
on the boat.
On the ship.
He's told me that a few times, and it's freaky.
It's crazy.
And like he said, and God, I know Patrick. He's not like in terms of our
oh yeah, he's not fucking weird like
he
us.
doesn't he's not fascinated by this weird stuff. I mean, he enjoys the occasions, but it's not like
he's not like this isn't his whole life.
He's not the type of guy who just sees ghosts everywhere he goes. It's not that that's wrong, and the people that do aren't. I'm just saying he doesn't play around in this realm.
Yeah, exactly.
He's very has to see it to believe it type of guy. I know this about him. So when he told me this story, it really took me back.
And I love the storytelling. And also it just seems like it actually happened this way. That like he didn't, he thought it was just kind of him or, he was having these experiences. And then he finds out that his sister was also experiencing things, but he didn't even find it, like they didn't talk to each other. That's how I feel like you really know something is real. And I feel like that must have, even though he said like his stomach dropped and everything and like that was scary, it was just like a weird thing to find out that his sister had been noticing it too. But it must have also been like such a relief to be like, oh my God, it's not just me. Like clearly this is actually happening.
True to his Irish nature, he kept it bottled up.
Yep. That's what you got to do, guys. You got to bottle up your emotion. You got to put you got to put a cork on it, and then you just got to boil until you yell at your cousin at a baptism.
Oh yeah.
But in this case, it worked out.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this first edition of Listener Story.
That's right. And if you have stories, please, once again, reach out, let us know. Really, any means of communication will do.
And a lot of people gave us stories. We promise we'll use them in the future, but we want to take this moment real quick just to say thank you. Obviously, we always shout out our Patreon donors, but we want to say thank you to every single one of you. This podcast isn't even a year old. It started tomorrow, which on one hand, it's like, I'm surprised at how short we've been doing it and how successful it's gotten. But at the same time, it also feels weird to like, oh, wait, that was almost...
I know, right?
We'll be coming up on it. We got episode 50 coming soon. Amityville's going to be 50.
Yeah, and then just our year anniversary is going to come before we know it. So it's just... Yeah. This has gone so much better than we could have ever hoped for. We know that this year is trying on everyone, and this is a hard time, and we hope that we are able to bring a little bit of joy to you guys, or fun scares.
Absolutely, because I'll be honest, when we see the comments and all that stuff, it brings us joy. So just know that you guys are giving us just as much. Like we are so grateful for the compassion, just the new friends we've made via, through our social media and stuff, and feels like we know them in person, even though we haven't met most of these people in person. It just feels like you do, you know? We're so grateful, and we thank you so much. We have listeners, I think, in every continent other than Antarctica, which we'll get them.
Right? We're going to get those fucking penguins.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I mean, of course, the U.S., but we've got tons of listeners in the U.K. and in the Philippines. We got to do a Filipino episode soon. We will.
Mm-hmm. South Africa has been so good to us.
Oh, South Africa has been amazing, obviously. Thank you all so much. Obviously, whether you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all of it, or none of it, you're all welcome here on Creep Street, and you are what makes Creep Street so wonderful.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you all so much. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Obviously, if you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night.
And happy holidays from Maureen, Dylan, and Banshee.
Happy holidays.
Ho, ho, ho.